Welcome to Techstination. Joining us is Richard Stokes, the CEO of a company called Winston Privacy. Thank you for joining us, Richard.
Thanks, Fred.
Well, to get started, what is Winston Privacy all about?
So Winston was designed to solve the problem of online surveillance. It's a plug-and-play solution for the average consumer. Doesn't require any technical expertise. Just plug it in your network, and then it encrypts, scrambles, and accelerates your internet.
So step us through. This is a piece of hardware, right? A little box. Describe it for us.
So it's a small little metal box, aluminum, about 5.5 inches square. Looks real nice, especially up against your black plastic routers that everybody seems to have. You just plug your wireless router into one of the ports, and you plug the other port into your cable modem. That's it.
And then what is it doing? What does it do?
So Winston has a bevy of privacy defenses built into it. So at the network layer, it protects all of the devices in your home, your smart TVs, your internet refrigerators, your doorbells, everything. And what it's doing is it's analyzing that traffic as it flows through your network, and it's trying to determine what is a privacy risk and what is not. So as an example, I have a pretty typical home network. A few laptops, phones, devices, etc. And on my network, I have no Facebook or Instagram apps installed, but Facebook and Instagram calls are being made by about 70 different applications on my home network. So Winston sees that coming through and says, okay, well, this is a privacy risk. And so then it steps up its defenses on that. So it essentially applies a set of both static and dynamic security policies. Some things are hard-coded, other things are determined on the fly. But it'll take that traffic, and if it determines it's a privacy risk, it will cloak it. It'll scramble it all over the U.S. It'll eventually end up in its original destination. But what ends up happening is your IP address changes. And so that decouples your physical location from the device traffic itself. So that is then sent back to your computer. And what that looks like to you is as you're surfing the web, your location is going to jump around. So if you go to the New York Times, for instance, it's going to find a different city. You go to YouTube TV, you're going to see a different city there. That could change every 10 minutes or so. And it's pretty cool to watch. On top of the network layer, there's an application layer defense as well. So we have various things. The biggest ones are artificial intelligence for cookie blocking. And what that does, it solves the problem of where browsers today will block third-party cookies. Most advertisers and tracking companies, they know that, and they've devised methods to work around it. And so one of those big methods is stuffing their cookies inside of first-party calls where they're not blocked. And so you're still getting tracked even if you're using Firefox or other cookie blockers. So within Winston is an artificial intelligence system which looks at those cookies and it says, hey, is this a tracking cookie? Is this something that's required for the website to function, or is it something in between? Are we not sure? And it takes appropriate actions on all those, either blocking them or reducing their expiration time and so on. And then finally, there's anti-fingerprinting. So many of the top websites on the internet are now relying on cookieless tracking to identify users. And so these are things where they'll draw invisible images on the browser window, and they'll see how your particular computer renders them, and they use that to identify your device. The scary thing about it is that it works even through incognito mode. So you go into one of those incognito windows, you're still being identified by any of these websites that you're visiting. They know who you are. So Winston bundles protections for all these different things and a few others, all in one little box, and you don't really have to know how any of it works. It's just we flip the model, and now we're making the technology work for the consumer instead of against them.
Does it create lag time in using websites or doing what you need to do online?
So actually, we're going to be unveiling a demo at CES, which shows how much faster your internet gets with Winston. So on average, we're blocking around 44 or 45% of all the requests leaving a typical home network. That can, due to video ads and pop-ups and things like that, that can be as much as 70% of the data transfer going in and out of your network. That's eliminated by Winston. And so when you take that off and you localize DNS and you do these other optimizations that we have, what ends up happening is you see this, you have a perceived acceleration on your network. Even though we do incur about, call it 30 milliseconds on average for cloaked calls of additional latency, that's more than made up by the fact that you're not using as much as of your internet connection to download tracking and advertising, as well as the fact that your CPU and your browser isn't as busy rendering stuff in the background, so it can actually spend its time rendering the stuff on the page that you want to see.
And how do you know with certain websites that really require your location or to work properly? Weather, for instance, things along those lines. How do or news? How do you cope with that if it's scrambling your location?
Yeah, it's a great question. So news is a good one, or if you're looking for just local restaurants to go visit, you actually want to share your location. So we designed Winston not to be an anonymizer, but more along the lines of being the new default opt-out. So instead of opting in your information to everybody willy-nilly, you decide, you're in control when you want to share that information or not. So within the Winston interface, as well as the browser extension, which is a nice, convenient, thin layer around the device itself, there's an easy button, just a whitelist button. If you want to share your location or you want to share other data, flip that switch. It'll share your information for default, or by default, that's for about 10 minutes. But you can share for an hour or a day or forever if you want, if it's a site that you regularly go to. So as an example, let's say you're a web developer and you work on Shopify. Shopify has a tremendous amount of tracking scripts installed on it by default. And so Winston more or less will work, but there's corners of Shopify, like in the development interface, that it'll interfere with. So you just hit that switch and Shopify works exactly the way it was originally intended to, tracking it all.
And with the controversial cameras, at least they've become controversial of late with a couple of instances, or at least one instance of a hacker getting in and talking to people in their homes or even children. Do you prevent that kind of activity?
Well, we can hinder some attacks on those things. So in general, when you're sharing data or you intentionally bring devices in your home with that potential to track you, not just cameras, but things like echoes or other voice assistants, these things are tracking you, and that's by design. So we don't block those. What we do, however, is we can decouple the physical location of the device from the device traffic itself. So in the infamous case of the Nest hacker who said, "Hey, I'm standing in your baby's room," they talk about whether he could figure out where he lived or not. And he could from his IP address. So with Winston, even if they get into your camera, they're not going to see your true IP address. And so that decouples that physical location. That's a really important thing because, frankly, we don't know what's happening with these devices as we bring them in our home, what the implications of that is. It could be minor, could be privacy implications, it could be actual physical security implications. People know that we're home or know that we're not home, or maybe just our kids are home. Our devices could be leaking that information.
Well, you've received a CES Innovation Award for CES 2020, and a lot of folks are going to want to know, well, when can I get one? How do I get one? Give us the scoop there.
The great news is we are launching to the general public in January. So the history of Winston was we originally had some pilot units out there very early in the year. We launched on Indiegogo and Kickstarter in May and have been shipping those units steadily throughout the year, gathering user feedback, improving the product, and so on. And the feedback has gotten to the point now where we're very comfortable selling this to the public. So you'll be able to buy it directly on our website at winstonprivacy.com in January.
Again, the website is winstonprivacy.com. Richard Stokes, thank you for taking all the time with us.
Thanks, Fred. I really appreciate it.
Now this. How many companies out there have continued to innovate when it comes to building a better radio? I'm Fred Fishkin, host of Techstination, and I'm here to tell you about the new CC Skywave SSB radio from the wonderful people at C. Crane. Bob and his crew really love radio, and it shows in this new compact model that is packed with features. Beyond great AM and FM reception and sound, you can tune into shortwave signals from around the world, listen to ham radio operators, aviation, and more. It's the radio you'll turn to every day, and in emergencies. It will run for nearly 3 days on just 2 AA batteries. Pair the sleep timer with the new Soft Speaker 3, and you've got the perfect radio for your nightstand. Of course, it can wake you up too. Click on CCrane at Techstination.com and put in the code Techstination for a free flashlight with your order. They love radio, and you'll love CCrane.